I'm Chip Bach, and welcome to BluRock. On each episode, we'll discuss what life is like on this big blue rock, where we are all headed, separately and together, what changes we need to make to ourselves, the planet, and towards each other, and just discuss what daily life is like for your fellow crew. And maybe, just maybe, we may also see a commonality that connects all of us.
All right. Welcome to BluRock. This is one of the inaugural episodes of BluRock, and I've got an inaugural guest of all guests, Dave Kalama, calling in all the way from Hawaii. Dave, a little round of applause for you. I know you don't always love the attention. You do it more for the love of the sport, but hey, we'll throw a little applause in there for you. So, Dave, thanks for joining us today.
Good morning.
I told you, super excited to talk to you. Obviously, you and I have known each other for a few years. I've known you in passing for probably a lot longer. Probably walked past you and threw you a shock at rainbow sandals, Battle of the Paddles that I was in and things like that, but didn't get a chance to really, get to know you until we spent some time at one of your mini Kalama camps with you teaching me how to paddle better than I already was and things like that. And I bought a board from you and other stuff. So, really wanted to take a deeper dive for everybody that's listening and watching, kind of get to know you better, kind of what you're up to lately, and then get into some little bit deeper stuff because it's a weird time we're living in for all of us, even for surfers. So anyway, Dave, I guess to get started, obviously Dave Kalama is a big wave surfer. That's probably what he's most well known for. But a lot of people don't realize he touches all the different areas of the water sports. Dave, you want to give us a little background on that, from your perspective?
Sure. First of all, good morning, Chip. Great to be with you. I'm stoked. You seem to have a really cool concept that you're creating with your podcast, so I'm excited to be here. I appreciate that. But quickly, the kind of 30-second history on me. Born in Southern California, Costa Mesa, Newport area as a young kid. I ended up in high school up in Mammoth, so I got into ski racing, chased that for a few years. It didn't work out, which brought me to Maui. I've been here for 36 years now. My first passion has always been surfing, but what got me to Maui was windsurfing, and that sort of started me down this waterman's path combined with my surfing, and was very fortunate to discover and get in with the right people, which led me to so many other facets that we can get into. But tow surfing, longboarding, tandem, canoe surf, canoe racing, paddle boarding, just all these different aspects, which feels like I've sort of willingly or unknowingly turned into kind of a waterman and have sort of made a life out of it. So that's kind of the 30-second version of who I am and what I've done.
So a couple of quick questions about that, about your background. I was doing a little bit of research and came up with some pretty cool things. I think one of the things I wanted to ask you is, I think a lot of people, obviously because of where you're at, your name, your background, Dave's Hawaiian, right? Like historic Hawaiian. So I guess the question is, I look at your background, it appears that you are, but man, you were like a West Coast kid growing up. So how did that all work out? Because I'm seeing things in your lineage. Your grandfather was Hawaii amateur champion, like 1962, something like that, 64, somewhere in that range, early 60s. Your dad brought outrigger canoe from the islands to California in the 50s. Like, these are the things I'm like, he's never mentioned any of these things. Like, these are kind of like, for me as a waterman, and for I think anybody that knows anything about the water, even if you live in Midwest United States, those are kind of big things, man, especially the outrigger. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yep. So your facts are right, but it's flipped around. My grandfather was the one that brought canoe paddling or started the first club in California, Newport Outrigger.
I'm going to fire my researcher right now. It's me, so that's fine. I fire myself a lot during the day.
The facts are accurate, and that's the main thing. My dad was the 1962 U.S. surfing champion, won the Huntington Beach contest. And so, my father's full-blooded Hawaiian. That's where I get my Hawaiian lineage and connection. His father was very much an established waterman and used to swim competitively against the Duke. Obviously, the Duke was faster, or you'd know my grandfather's name a lot better. But he was the real deal. He was the real deal. And
that's awesome.
A lot of Waterman lineage there, and a lot to live up to. But because I didn't grow up
you guys have a beach named after your family in Maui?
Yes,
I understand that too.
That's my grand uncle. So my grandfather's brother was very prominent in local government back in the early 1900s. And so there's a school named after him. There's
a town in Washington State. Same. I heard that too.
Yep. So one of the family members ventured over to the Pacific Northwest a long time ago. And the story I heard was he set up camp next to this river that had no name. And so they ended up calling the river Kalama River. And then when the town was sort of born out of the location, it became known as Kalama Town.
So he was looking for a peaceful place to go hang out by the water, and people just showed up and kind of messed up the secret spot, is what you're saying.
Something along those lines.
They moved in, built a town, said, look, we'll name it after you. We're here now, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Man, there's a pro and a con there someplace. I don't know. I'm wondering if he was happy about that or not at the time. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But man, like I said, that's big. When you start talking about indigenous peoples of the American continent, and obviously by default, Hawaii, not by default, but meaning by association nowadays, modern U.S., you've got the Hawaiian Islands. To have that kind of background, obviously all indigenous, Native Hawaiians have a lineage back, right? In some way, shape, or form, it's an island chain. But that's honestly pretty cool, right? Because I don't know that all people's native heritage like that has that kind of background, and beaches and towns named after. That's really cool. And then obviously to bring something over that's such a cultural part of Polynesian culture, not just Hawaii, which is the canoeing part, and have that be part of your lineage. It's like, wow, what's left, right? Inventing surfing, like it's pretty cool. But obviously it must be in your DNA, because one of the things that a lot of people may or may not realize, but all of these stand-up paddle boards that are invading all of the resorts worldwide, including in the blow-up form, all kind of hook back to Dave and a buddy of his that some people might know by the name of Laird Hamilton. I had a Blame Laird t-shirt a few years ago, as a matter of fact. Did that, and if anybody's watched Step Into Liquid, which is not a recent film, foiling, which is now all the rage. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, Dave, because I know part of what you're doing now is more directly related to that. But along these lines of kind of lineage and what has Dave's family done and what's he done for our society, what I know you and Laird. Tell us a little bit about what that was like. I've read a little bit about those early days of stand-up paddleboarding, trying to figure out how to get a long enough paddle. And then there's also this little island thing going on. As you know, I've been a team rider for C4 Waterman, more so back in the day when Brian Kalama and Dave Parmenter and Todd Bradley owned the company. But I read stuff like Kalama was one of the first guys to bring back a paddle and started paddling at Makaha. But then, I've heard stories from, you and Laird. No, we were doing it. And I almost feel like there's this little bit of who started it then? What's your take on that? Because obviously you were there getting it done, or figuring it out is a better way to put it.
Yeah. My assertion is that we never started it. I make no claim to that. The stories I've heard are that it originated more with the Duke.
The Beach Boys, right? In Waikiki, they used to paddle out. Was it one of the choice, right? Exactly. To take pictures of the tourists. They would sit on a chair or a stool on a tandem board and paddle out using basically like an oar. So they could use their hands because the cameras weren't waterproof, right? Back in the 50s and 60s. So
exactly. That's a fairly well-known fact around here. So no one's ever sort of really thought we made it up because they knew it existed long before we came along. I would say all we did was help popularize it.
Right.
And the Makaha guys, I am certain they were doing it before they saw us do it because they do everything there.
Right.
And any form of riding a wave, be it popular or not, I am sure Brian or Mel or Rusty or somebody's paddled out on a picnic table and probably ridden it.
That's one of the things I love the most. People that go to Hawaii from the mainland or anywhere in the world, right? They go to Oahu and they do the Waikiki thing and they do all that. And they may even go up to the North Shore. But because of where Makaha sits, right? It's pretty isolated. It's very local, right? So in other words, unless you don't know where you're going, you wouldn't even know how to get to most of the places that are there. And if you do show up, I think as long as you show respect, they're okay. But for the most part, it's a very local place. But one of the things that I find fascinating is that we've got this weirdness around water places and resorts and surf breaks, and obviously with the blowing up of the WSL, and we'll talk about that in a second too, because I know you do commentating for them also. But when you look at the Kelly Slater and all that stuff, town I live in is where Slater's from, so I've got a lot of pro surfers here. But it's all shortboard and shredding and doing all this stuff. And if you, God forbid, you go out with a boogie board, everybody is like kook and whatever. Meanwhile, where it all starts and where the true watermen are, everything's on the table. Boogie boards, handboards, body surfing, like you said, picnic table. It doesn't matter. They'll go out and make a day of it, and that's one of the things that I love about the waterman lifestyle and the sport and things like that. And that's one of the things that obviously I know you and I have in common is that we don't put labels on stuff too much, right? Tell me more. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, Makaha to me, it's like a mirror and a magnifying glass combined together. Whatever you bring to Makaha will be reflected and magnified. So if you come in flexing and thinking you're somebody, you're going to get squashed. If you come in with respect and aloha, they will magnify that back to you, and you will be shown that aloha. But if you don't, you're going to get 10 times of whatever you show up with. So
I like that. We're going to get into that in that esoteric part, because now I'm starting to hear things like vibration and energy and things like that, which you're feeling in that area. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
So whatever you bring to Makaha will be returned tenfold. So be careful how you come and how you enter that zone, because it's very old school. It's very Hawaiian. Lots of aloha, but lots of beatings if you're not respectful. In terms of their surfing, and I think this is true in Hawaii, is we don't equate your talent or skill level to the board that you ride. Your talent and skill level is determined by how you ride, whatever it is you ride, not by the length of your board, which seems to be much more of a common philosophy in mainland U.S., where the size of your board dictates your skill level, or is a way to communicate to everybody how good of a surfer you are by the shortness of your board. In Hawaii, length has nothing to do with it. Style of your board has nothing to do with it. It's purely on the merit and the skill that you exhibit when you ride, whatever it is you ride.
So for those paying attention, Dave just said length doesn't matter in Hawaii. Just want to make sure we're clarifying that. Dave, you're gonna get a lot of letters about that one, I think. Anyway, no, that's exactly the vibe and the feel I get, and that's something that when I first met Brian Kalama and I first met Dave Harmoner and Todd, they were really big about that, right? Because they had started this company on basically a shoestring. They were taking super long boards and cutting them in half and doing all kinds of weird stuff to kind of push the envelope forward. Todd was already making outrigger canoe carbon paddles, so you just had to figure out how to make it longer without breaking and things like that. And one of the things that we bonded over was the fact that I don't like contests, right? I don't like the whole shortboard, longboard, who's the best, who's the worst. I can't figure out the point system, quite frankly. I mean, I've competed in some contests, and I stopped doing it because I'm just like, my personality is, if I'm doing what you told me to do to get points, and I don't fit, I'm not, in the finals, then you need to explain it to me. And I had a problem because I grow up again because I didn't grow up doing. I grew up doing sailboat racing, one design, but I never grew up doing surf contests. So being here now and in kind of the hub of right coast surfing, I started doing contests in the early days of when they were letting stand up be an exhibition contest. And I'd get all pissed and just my personality. I'd go up on the judges' stand and be like, explain to me what I should have done differently. And the dude's like, you can't do that. What are you doing up here? I'm like, I don't understand. I did this. You're supposed to use a paddle, initiate the turn, freaking one of the longboarders decides to borrow a board, goes out there, does a couple of, nose rides, and he gets the trophy. Like, I'm confused. What the hell happened here? So I agree with you. That whole concept of putting everything in a box, that's one of the things I really truly love and feel like a pseudo honorary Howley on the right coast because my spirit is aloha and from the island, and I try and constantly bring it here. So I really like the way you kind of outline that, the way you guys see the world, see life, see surfing, and kind of the whole concept of competition and what you're riding defines who you are and all this kind of stuff. And that's probably what's led you to some of the other things you guys have done. I know from a standpoint of where you came from. So I know you ended up in Maui. You started doing. Now I heard this was because of some vacations your parents took you on.
Yep.
Like you kind of went around the islands, really liked Maui because you saw some of those, world-class windsurfing areas, and then pretty much graduated from high school and just headed to Maui. I mean, is that fair? Is that a correct statement?
Pretty close. I mean, I was putting a lot of effort into trying to be a competitive ski racer, and it wasn't happening. And I was getting extremely frustrated. And there was a very clear moment in a race I had where, earlier in the season, I was the second guy on the team. And here we are later in the season, and I'm down to like first alternate because I can't finish. Anyway, so I start this race around 72nd. I move myself up to 10th or 12th place after the first run. So it's two runs combined together. And I'm like, okay, this is it. This is the moment I get my ski racing career back on track and I do something. And I go out of the starting gate and I blow out at the second gate. And there wasn't even a turn at the first gate. I didn't even fall. I just kept going left when I should have gone right. And it became so painfully obvious this wasn't meant to be. And that was kind of my moment of clarity where, all right, you're not meant to be a ski racer. And not long after, my parents were in Hawaii, and my mom said, hey, your dad's getting bored. He needs someone to hang out with and play and whatnot. And so they bought me a ticket for the moment to come over to Kauai, but the plane had to let some passengers off on Maui first. So I never even got off the plane. I just looking out the window and the approach and seeing the windsurfers. It was like, this is it, And
For anybody that doesn't know, by the way, the difference between Maui and Kauai is dramatic. Kauai is like Jurassic Park. Maui
Yes.
a little bit more refined. But anyway, sorry, man. Just go ahead. I'm hearing you're on your way to Jurassic Park and you decide to stay in Maui, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Maui literally spoke to me and said, this is where you belong. And it was one of the clearest moments I've ever had in my life. And tried to find my way back to that clarity many times and never have. But there was a split second where I was sitting on that plane where that voice inside my head, in fact, I thought it was someone in the seat behind me telling me,
wow,
hey, this is where you belong. And so I turn around and I look at him, and this lady looks at me all weird, like, what are you looking at? You know, oh, sorry, nothing. But it was so clear. It was like someone was speaking to me. And so I took that as a sign, quit school, moved to Maui, and start windsurfing. So that's what I did. And I had a good friend that moved over from the mainland with me. And, you know, our thing was at least a year. Don't, you know, things go south, and don't give up. Stay for at least a year or until you stop having fun, you know. And I'm 36 years later, and I'm still having as much fun as I ever have.
Wow, man. I mean, that's something that I know for myself, right? Everybody has regrets, right? They have those moments. I've got several from when I was younger, you know, things that I think back, man, if I just done this, it would end me up here. But what I've learned later on in life, clearly you learned it much earlier, and it probably has just done nothing more than reinforce that you made the right decision, clearly, because look where you are and look what you've done. But yeah, I think everything leads us to where we're supposed to go. It's all about the journey. I'm a little jealous because you kind of figured out the start of the journey sooner than most of us.
I didn't figure anything out. I was.
It's just the journey to
wandering
start
along.
is what you figured out, where to start, right?
Yeah.
Which path to take. You just saw it and went, I'm going. That's not many people do that, man.
Well, you know what? I think I had a dislike for school that was strong enough to allow me any excuse to go another direction.
So the voice in your head may or may not have been there. It's just a story you've told yourself over the years. I heard a voice. I'm more of a Hawaiian shaman than I am anything else. So that's what got me out to Hawaii. So no, that's cool, and definitely ties into the whole thing with BluRock and other stuff we're going to talk about as we go through the thing. So we're definitely linking up here, man. So I'm happy about that. So I saw also. I mean, obviously you played high school football at Mammoth Lakes. Now, where's Mammoth Lakes compared to Newport Beach? They're not the same place.
No.
Okay.
It's 5.5 hours drive north of LA, and so my parents.
It's in the mountains, right?
Yes,
I mean,
in the mountains.
It's where you would have gotten into skiing.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, that's what I thought, and I'm like, this is weird. He's in Newport Beach, and then he's in Mammoth Lakes, California. Those are dramatically different climates. How'd you end up there?
So my parents split when I was very young. I stayed with my mom in Southern California. I moved up to go live with my dad for high school, and that's what got me to the Mammoth Lakes area. He had moved up there several years earlier to kind of check out surfing, get into skiing, really found a passion for it. And so that's what led him up there and got me up there later in 79. And so I did my 4 years of high school there, worked out at Snowbird for the following winter after I graduated, still trying to be a ski racer. Then went to Sacramento, started college back up, took a year off, had a very good ski racing team. A bunch of my high school buddies were there. Gave it one more year, and as the story goes, it didn't pan out, but thank goodness it didn't.
Yeah, no kidding, man. That's fantastic. All right, so let's jump forward then to now. So you're windsurfing. What are you doing at that point? So you get out there, you're windsurfing. Were you trying to compete in windsurfing? Were you instructing? Like what did life look like then? We're talking now the 80s, right?
Yes. So This is 85, July 2nd, 1985, 12:30 in the afternoon on a United plane was when I landed in Maui. And I just I could windsurf when I got here, but very much a beginner. But just loved it and spent all of my waking hours at the beach trying to figure the sport out. Got fairly proficient at it within a year and a half and signed up for a contest at Hukipa, made it through the trials into the main event, and lost my first two heats to a gentleman named Jerry Wilson, and then Jerry Lopez, the surfing Jerry Lopez, was in the event.
So you're telling me Jerry Lopez not only was killing it at pipe, but he was also messing with everybody on windsurfing as well. See,
very, very good windsurfing.
Too much talent messing with everybody's events. That's the problem. Anyway, go ahead.
So
I don't think anybody knows that about Jerry Lopez, that he was a windsurfer. I really don't.
Oh yeah.
That's the first I've ever heard of it.
Jerry was my first sponsor for windsurfing. He started making me windsurf boards, and I rode for him for several years. But yeah, every contest after that, I kept working my way up through the ladder of competition, and then eventually, about 3.5 years later, I started winning a few of the major wave sailing events on Maui, which really kind of sent my windsurfing career into a whole nother level where I could make a living off of it. And so I did that for several years.
1991 world champion. Is that correct?
Well, I won the Hard Rock Cafe World Cup of windsurfing, which was a single event. But at the time, it was the richest, I think it still is, the richest wave sailing event there's ever been anywhere. I won a car and I don't know.
Holy cow.
$6,000 or something like that. And I beat Robbie Nash in the final to do it, which was really, that's like beating Michael Jordan in the finals.
Absolutely.
Was very significant for me.
Probably significant for Robbie too. At the time. Yeah. When he's basically crushing it everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Robbie was the man. He's still the man. But at that time, he owned windsurfing. He was Mr. Windsurfer. So.
Yeah, that was back when I was first learning to windsurf. And I mean, obviously, at the time I'm living in Scarsdale, New York, and Long Island Sound is my beach. That's a far cry from what you guys were doing out in the islands. But Robbie Nash was like, I had pictures of Robbie Nash, catching airs off of waves and all kinds of stuff. And we had, some of the big boards. That was when Baron Von Bick was getting into making windsurfers and stuff like that. So we had a handful of different boards that we'd take down to Cape Hatteras and try and ride waves and stuff, but they were big logs. You know what I mean? Nothing like what you guys were riding. So Robbie was like, to me, I literally had pictures cut out of magazines and stuck on the wall, on my bedroom, that kind of stuff. So yeah, he was the man in windsurfing. Absolutely. Dude, that's unbelievable. So now you go through windsurfing, and when is it you meet Laird Hamilton? When does that whole thing start? Because for those that don't know, Dave and Laird were partners in a lot of different things that led to a lot of different cool things, which were Dave. I'm gonna have him explain more details on that have been kind of changed the water sports for everybody. But when did that all start?
So Laird and I met not too long after I moved to Maui.
He was living in Maui then, right? He wasn't in Kauai?
Yeah.
He was in Maui too. Or
he was
bouncing back and forth.
Bouncing back and forth between Oahu and Maui quite a bit.
Okay.
And Laird was actually a really good windsurfer himself. He didn't necessarily compete, but on the bigger days when there was waves of consequence, you'd always see Laird out there just tearing it apart. So through mutual friends, I had met Laird fairly early on in my windsurfing career and knew him casually, and we were friends, but it wasn't until probably the early 90s that we started hanging out a lot more, and kind of longboarding, tow surfing really brought us together and solidified the friendship. But I'd known Laird for a little while, so to become partners in the tow surfing wasn't a big leap because we were already kind of friends from windsurfing.
Right. Well, you guys, I mean, that brings us into some of the things that you guys were literally the pioneers of, right? Tow surfing. I've seen pictures of you guys with like a little inflatable towing each other, and then maybe a Boston whaler, like stuff that if you get caught in the inside, it's on the rocks and it's expensive. Way before the jet skis and things like that had the power and the speed to keep you out of harm's way. So you guys were really flirting with danger, probably way more finesse than there is today.
Well, back at the beginning of tow surfing, so it was more Laird, Derek Thorner, and Buzzy Kerbach over on Oahu, experimenting with I think it was Buzzy's Zodiac, towing into waves. and riding their big Waimea guns. But almost at the same time they were dabbling in all of that, we were really going down the rabbit hole of foot straps and connected surfing and loops, aerials, and all of this. And when we got all back together on Maui and combined the two things, the utilization of the Zodiac with these small surfboards that had foot straps, that's kind of when everybody's mind got blown, and all of a sudden we started to see what the potential was in combining all these different aspects.
Right.
And we had already known about Piahi, but Piahi at that time wasn't known as Piahi. It had several names prior to that. One of the first, and Jerry Lopez was the one that introduced Piahi to us, but it was originally known as the Atom Blaster. Then there used to be a geometric
that's
house.
a sign of the nuclear age, right? 1950s.
Exactly.
That's pretty funny because based on what it's called now, you kind of have an idea when that got named. Anyway, go ahead.
There used to be a geodesic house up on the cliff.
Yeah.
So then it got known as domes. Then Jaws came. Actually, there was another sign that was at the cliff called Dragon's Back for a little while, and then Jaws, and then we started riding it and figured we better find out the real name of this place, or the Hawaiian name, and show it the respect that it deserves. Because once we got out there and realized how much power this wave had, how different it was, and the speeds that you travel, it was like we need to show respect. And
was anybody really riding it before then, or was there really only like really small windows of time when you could ride it because of how big and gnarly it can get?
Well, Brett Lickle and I windsurfed up from Poquipa back in '88, and that was the first time I know of any windsurfers riding it. And it was a small day in retrospect. At the time, it seemed massive, like double mast. But in terms of surfing, yeah, we had heard stories. There was a guy named Johnny B on Maui that had told us he had surfed it, paddled out from the rocks and surfed it. And he did have a couple pictures to prove it. But looking back, all those days would now be considered small relative to how guys are riding now. So no, we weren't the first ones to ride it.
Yeah.
Jerry Lopez and his brother Victor used to tell us stories of when they'd go watch it and climb down the cliff to go paddle out, get down there at water level and see how actually big it was. Because up on the cliff, you're like, oh, it's 8 or 10 feet. We can do that.
Paddle into that.
Yeah. You get down at water level and see actually what that 8 to 10 is actually more like 15 to 20. And all of a sudden it's, whoa. Yeah, we brought the wrong board. Let's go home and get the bigger board.
Just sit on the shoulder and watch it for a while. Yeah, no kidding.
So,
yeah, wow.
That was kind of our first experience with Piahi.
So you guys start basically the whole concept of tow-in surfing. And I remember what movie was it? Was it Step into Liquid, or was it Endless Summer 2 when there was this whole part about the paddle-in crew and Mavericks and then going over to Hawaii and seeing the tow-in crew? Was that? I can't remember because I can hear. I want to hear Dana Brown's voice in my head.
So the first movie that showed Piahi and where we got our first jet ski was Endless Summer 2.
Yeah.
The contrast between Mavericks and Piahi was Riding Giants.
Oh, Riding Giants. Okay.
Where it had Jeff Clark's whole story at Mavericks, kind of Laird and I over at Piahi. And
by the way, while we're on that, for everybody listening, Dave, you got an award for that, did you not? For Riding Giants? If I'm not mistaken, you got an award for that. And while I'm on awards, I'll talk about a couple other ones too. But from what I'm understanding, I believe it was at the film festival, was it?
Yes, the one on Maui. Yes,
the one on Maui, right? So I believe you got an award for your role in that. There was also, which by the way, for everybody listening, that movie has a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. Fun fact. But let me tell you, for a surf movie to have a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, pretty damn good. Because one, you got a lot of people watching it that had no idea anything about surfing. And as Dave probably knows, surfers are the worst critics of surf movies.
Absolutely.
They will destroy a surf movie over ridiculous things. So to maintain a 92% with every surfer in the world being able to watch it, and it holds that record plus non-surfers, that's a pretty damn good thing on that. So I wanted to mention that, but there was also, as we're kind of talking about you as you're going through your time in Hawaii and kind of moving forward to present today, some of the things people don't realize about Dave is a lot of awards, he doesn't talk about them. We know all that. But, from a standpoint of, winning different contests, and obviously I know you've won contests in paddleboarding, downwinding races, the Maui Nash paddleboard championships, you had a win there back in 2011. You were in the finalists for the SUP Awards, which is a big thing for anybody that's in the stand-up paddleboard community, globally as one of the top male paddlers. I think you made it the top 3 on that back around the same time. But I understand in 2006, you were awarded the Beacon Award at the Maui Film Festival. And this was for reviving, I think it was for yours and Lair's production company, Bandman, for reviving the surf film genre. So for anybody taking notes and to take you through, Dave's lineage, brought outrigger canoe surfing to the mainland. He pretty much pioneered with some other gentlemen tow-in surfing, won a whole bunch of awards, and then also is credited with reviving the surf film genre after it had been around for a long time. That's a heavy title to wear on something like that. Also, a couple more awards. 2018, you were inducted into the the Duke Foundation Hawaiian Waterman Hall of Fame, which is huge, is it not?
Yeah, that
my
was
understanding is that's a really big deal, especially if you're in the Hawaiian culture.
Yeah, I was very humbled to be asked to join that Hall of Fame, and so awards really don't inspire me. I don't have any in my house, and not that I'm against them. I love competition. Always, I enjoy competition where there is a finish line. It's black and white. You know who won. There's no kind of human subjectivity.
You and I have talked about that. That's my little pet peeve. I like a finish line, right?
Yeah.
Except as long as everybody's the same size as me that's in the race. That's another discussion. We're still looking for a Clydesdale class in stand-up paddleboard racing and canoe racing, but I digress. I'll leave that on the table.
But yeah, that award or that induction into the Waterman Hall of Fame, it almost doesn't sit well with me, because when I look at the Duke's Hall of Fame and the people that are in it, those are the real guys. Those are the guys that I looked up to, and I know their names and the lore and the myths and the legends that go with them. And to have walked my path and now be grouped with them feels odd, because I was just playing the whole time. I was just having fun. They seem like they were.
But Dave, that's the whole point, right? I think we're all led to believe that achieving anything, whether it's inner peace, happiness, wealth, whatever label you want to call wealth, right? Everybody always immediately thinks of wealth as money, but as you clearly know, wealth is way beyond financial means and having things. But when you're looking at things like that, it shouldn't be hard. I think we're programmed from the time we're kids, right? I mean, you played football and all this stuff. You got to work hard. You got to train hard. You got to put in the hours. You got to pay your dues. Those are all famous things that everybody hears about. And you got to go to college, right? That's another one, right? You got to go put in your 4 years, and then you're not allowed to even apply for a job until you put in your 4-year degree and all this garbage. It's not supposed to be that way. When you're doing what you love, it should feel easy, right? And I wonder if Duke would say the same thing to you, right? Like, Dave, it wasn't hard. Like, I loved what I was doing. What are you talking about? Swimming? Loved it. right? Surfing, loved it. I
Yeah.
don't think they
No,
thought of it as hard.
I think you're right. Having the perspective to look back now, yes, I think you nailed it spot on. But still, to be put in with that group of people, just I don't know that those are such significant people that have accomplished so much. And like I said, I just felt like I was playing. Nothing was ever drawn up on a drawing board in some secret laboratory where we make up what's next. It doesn't exist. It didn't happen like that.
Right.
Everything was so serendipitous and so much about the fun and the guys I was running with at that time. And because of windsurfing, we had already crossed over that mental hurdle of getting outside traditional surfing. And so really what that means is everything's on the table. No, there's nothing you can't do because of breaking from tradition. We had already crossed that line. And so everything we did was in pursuit of just having fun, getting away from the crowd. We weren't encumbered by any mental or traditional barriers to dictate how we should do something or whether we should do it or not at all. And so that's why I say a lot of what we did wasn't well thought out, wasn't well planned. A lot of the advice I give
Clearly based on
now,
the experience. I mean, along those lines, Dave. Speaking for those of you again listening or watching that, haven't actually been to a large wave break, right? I've been to Waimea as an example when they've had one of the Magic, Eddie classics. And by the way, just pure dumb coincidence. Everybody else probably been waiting around for months for them to have the contest. I just get off a plane, typical Howley. Hey, let's go check out the North Shore. Why are all these cars up there on the mountain? What's going on? What the hell? Wow, look, they're having a surf contest. Yeah, a big one. But to feel it, people don't understand. Like the wave comes in, and when the rocks are shaking on the cliff, that's an unbelievable thing to think. So to think of you guys going, yeah, let's take a blow up inflatable with a little outboard out there and not get killed. That'd be cool. Let's try that out. I don't think people actually understand what that it is like and what that means. And Dave, part of what for me personally, I know, and again, I'm going to throw some names out there just because there's going to be people listening to this that are not in the paddleboard community. They're not, they're just have their own hobbies, so to speak. But when you look at stand-up paddleboarding, people may know the names like Kai Lenny, mainly because Kai is he does it all, right? He's a total circus freak of anything that touches water. He's good at, and then does weird things with it besides. But you helped coach him, Slater Trout, who for anybody on social media, Slater was one of the first people to kind of embrace Instagram and get a big following and stuff like that. And Slater has this very, kind of world traveler, wander the world, Waterman, do it all, skydiving, the whole thing. But you coach these guys coming up. And I think for me personally, when I see you inducted into the Hall of Fame, it's about passing on this heritage and this knowledge. And so Duke and those men did that. You're doing it. I think it counts, man. It qualifies.
well,
I don't think it's the work. I think it's the love and the energy. There's one more award along those lines I wanted to mention. And correct me if I'm wrong in this, Dave, and I apologize. Now I'm going to show my podcasting novice trying to figure out where I wrote this down. You won an award having to do with embracing Hawaiian culture. It starts with a B. There's a name, or maybe that was the Beacon. No, that wasn't the Beacon Award. I apologize. You didn't win an award. That's what you're known for. So you're known, apparently, that's what I'm being told. You're very well known in Hawaiian culture and also globally for really not only embracing the culture, but the heritage and the community that surrounds everything related to water in the Hawaiian Islands and things like that. And for anybody that's ever been over there and experienced it or watched videos on TV, YouTube, etc., you'll see things where, or even some of the cornier movies that have been done about surfing in Hawaii, with this whole localism and, don't go to that beach. They'll beat you up if you're not, if they don't recognize you and all this kind of stuff. I think you've been kind of an ambassador of, what the culture really should be perceived at, how it should be respected, and how it's enjoyable for everyone. I mean, that was one of the things I loved about C4 Waterman when I read Brian Keolana's little thing on what's aloha to him. It had nothing to do with being Hawaiian. It had nothing to do with being a local versus, a haole. It applied to everyone in the world. It meant just expressing what you love and sharing it, no matter where you're at, and doing it without asking for anything in return.
Well, right. I think the golden rule, treat other people how you'd want to be treated, isn't just a saying in Hawaii. It's part of what aloha is, and more. It's the giving, it's the sharing. It's not just treating other people with respect and kindness, but it's the energy that comes from me giving you something, not necessarily that I have, but that's within me, either knowledge, emotion, time, whatever it is, experience, sharing that with other people. That is Hawaiian, but much more so, that's just being nice. It's being kind. You know what I mean?
It's called being human, right?
It's called being human.
I think it's fair to call that being a human being. So for those of you that are new to BluRock, and again, forgive me for, I'll get on my soapbox a little bit because I want to keep redefining this. The concept of the name BluRock is that we're on a big blue rock, right? We're all, 70% of this planet is covered by water. Clearly, Dave enjoys more of that percentage than the average fella or average human on the planet. He clearly also probably is way more defined as a blue rock. He lives on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. That's a blue rock. But the concept behind it is we're all in this thing together, right? There are no countries, borders, governments, religions, etc. We're all human beings, right? We all, aside from colors or backgrounds or cultures, we all have 2 hands, 2 feet, 10 fingers, 10 toes, etc. So what Dave's referring to is something that really is an element that runs through all of us. It shouldn't be just aloha, or it shouldn't be just an Hawaiian thing, right? I mean, is that fair to say?
Very much so. It is such a deep-rooted concept and part of the Hawaiian culture. I'm very proud that that's a huge basis of what Hawaiian culture is about. But like you just explained, it does not need to be unique to Hawaii. It is very much an earth thing, a blue rock.
You don't need to get on a plane and put a puka shell necklace around your neck and paddle out of Waikiki to feel aloha.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. So along those lines, Dave, are you familiar with the term? And I used to say this a different way. I just learned that I was saying it wrong because it's Hawaiian. I called it ho'oponopono.
Yep.
It's actually pronounced ho'oponopono.
Ho'oponopono.
Yeah. So you're familiar with that term? Okay. So that was one of the things I wanted to get kind of your input on that too, because this is something, believe it or not, I only learned 2-3 years ago. And I read a book, and I'll probably put it up in the credits and stuff what the book is if anybody wants to go take a look at it. But it's been written by some gentleman in Hawaii. But it's the art of ho'oponopono, which is the art of forgiveness. And one of the things I loved about it, which always, for whatever reason, always reminded me of you, is it's about the fact that it's an old practice in the Polynesian, traditionally Hawaiian islands. When there was a conflict in a village or a conflict between 2 tribes or islands or what have you, the whole concept of just coming together and going, you know what? I'm sorry. Forgive me. I love you. I thank you. I love you. They would say that to each other, and that was it. There was nothing else needed to be said. Argument's over. No war. No battle. Let's go surf and have a bonfire. Like that. It's that simple. And when I started incorporating it into my own life here, as a right coaster, ex-New Yorker, which you can't get the more opposite of Ho'oponopono than New York City. Again, I love New York. I'm just talking about just in general. Everybody's very, it's not that people are mean and not forgiving. They're just very driven, right? The energy is just, right? There's definitely something to be said for island time. So how do you feel about that, Dave? Was that something that resonated with you? Do you incorporate that into your day-to-day? Because to me, that was something that, like you were just saying, that should be a human thing, not just this ancient Hawaiian practice that's hidden away.
Yeah. Having the benefit of age, maybe a little too much of it now on my side, it's very easy for me to grasp and practice that. When you're young and you're trying to prove yourself, you're trying to earn respect within your group or culture, it's less of a focal point, right? And so you're less inclined to forgive people when it's more about you. As you get older and you start to realize it's not just about me, it's about us, that opens your mind to realizing life is so much better when there's no tension or there's no hate or there's no fear of somebody else.
When you drop the ego, yeah. When you
drop
stop
the ego,
leading with ego, yeah.
And when you can do that, and you can clear the air with somebody that maybe you've had an issue with, and while I am aware of it, I am far from knowledgeable about the Hawaiian culture. But there's a few things, aloha, ho'oponopono, that most people know. They're pretty common over here. Yeah, it's very simple, or at least at the time back in the Hawaiian culture, there was way less distractions, less materialism, and so while it might seem idealistic to be able to forgive somebody, I think, as you explained it, when they did, it was done. You didn't walk away from going, well, I'm gonna make that next business deal, or if I sell 500 coconuts and he only sells 100, da da da. It was very simple, and so I do believe Ho'oponopono in its roots was very authentic and very effective. It's more difficult to do that now with so many different objectives and focal points and priorities within your life. But if you can grasp any of that concept and utilize it in your daily life, even if it doesn't benefit the person you're forgiving, more importantly, it will benefit you in letting go of that anger and that stress that you carry.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because I'm the one that introduced this to my family. And when I say my family, my wife and my daughter. And we'll have an argument. Everybody gets in arguments. You try and maintain peace. I can spend the whole day on the water and yet, come back to the house and something goes sideways and there goes my day on the water. My Zen moment's gone. But I taught it to them. And so we use it all the time. That we've all adopted it. My wife and I use it probably more than anybody in the household. We can have an argument and I will literally just text her, I'm sorry, forgive me, I love you. And that's it. And that's the message to both of us. And she'll send back ho'oponopono to me with a heart. We're done. Now, the funny part about that is, if I really got her wound up, right? She's really ticked off because we were in some kind of debate and she really feels like she needs to win this one. And I send that to her. She sometimes has come into my office and said, I don't care that you sent me that. I'm not accepting it. And I go, that's the beauty of it. You don't have to. I feel great. And my face are like, no, I'm not accepting it. And she's like, I'm like, it doesn't matter. That's not how it works. I said it. I've been released. I'm free, And it was like that in the beginning. Now she's like, you're right. Oh, we're good. Right. And it really it's simplified things, and it prevents having these long drawn out conversations and debates and things like that. It's just, hey, I'm a human being. You're a human being. We had a disagreement. I love you. I'm sorry. Forgive me. That's it. Move on.
It reminds you very succinctly, what's more important, the cap getting put back on the toothpaste, or that connection and the love and bond that you have with the person?
Correct.
And just that little reminder is like, yeah, you know what? My bad. The cap on the toothpaste, okay. We're bigger than that. Let's move on.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, for us, it became such a part of my daily life. I've taught it to other people. I've sent the book as Christmas gifts to some of my staff that works for me and stuff like that. And I think some of them appreciate it. Others are like, what the hell? What is this thing? You know, this seems awful, kind of woo-woo, spiritual, you know, whatever. This kind of guy I am. I think I've always been attracted to that. That's why when you said you heard a voice over your shoulder, holy shit, Dave's been doing this as long as I have. I just ignored the voice. Like I didn't pay attention to it like he did. So I'm a little jealous that you recognize that so early on. So I want to talk about a couple more things like that, but I also want to be fair and make sure I get caught up to where you're at today. So where you're at today, Dave Kalama today has Kalama Performance, right? And I'll let you talk about that a little bit. You know, that's, you know, board making, foil, obviously now, you know, so here's one of the things I will talk in this esoteric part before we get into Kalama Performance, because it relates to it. And I just put this up on social media the other day. I was reading, somebody was saying something, there was a video that was up, and it was two guys that had taken a foil board. You may have seen this, Dave. Two guys, I don't know what the break was. I don't know whether it was Australia. I'm not really sure what part of the world it was in. But it was a longboarder and a shortboarder. Clearly were pissed off at a foil boarder that had been in the break, right? The foil boarder lost the board, washed up on the beach. They are jumping up and down on this guy's board, ripping the foil out of the deck. So much anger, right? And what cracked me up was, I was like, wait a minute. So back in the day, Gidget days, it was longboard. Then you get into the 70s, shortboard comes out. Longboarders hate the shortboarders. Then shortboarders gets really big in the 80s. Shortboarders hate the longboarders. Then stand-up paddleboard comes out in the 90s, and it's the shortboards and longboards all hate the stand-up paddleboarders, and now everybody hates a foil. It's just a weird thing. Nobody wants to explore anything new, and they just want to hate whatever shows up. Nobody sees it for what it could or can't be. When I first started stand-up paddleboarding here on the right coast, and Dave, I think I've told you this story, 2005-ish, Laird, there was a little tiny article in Outside Magazine about Laird biking to raise money for autism, which, by the way, that was one thing I forgot. Just so you guys all know, Dave and Laird biked and paddled the entire Hawaiian island chain to raise awareness for autism. When was that, Dave? How long ago?
I think that was 2008 or 7, something like that.
Somewhere in that range, right? 430 miles-ish? Does that sound about right? Linear?
Yeah, that sounds
the paddling alone probably took you more than that just because of the currents and the drifting, but linear straight line, if you could have done that.
Yeah, in my mind now, it's probably closer to 1,000 miles.
But I don't think anybody understood. They're like, 430 miles. That's not much. That's kind of like, you know, Lopez looking up on the cliff going, I can go ride that. Exactly. Yeah, try 430 miles in Hawaii on land, and then add in the span between the islands. That's a feat, man. I mean, the currents, the wildlife that's following you along the way. I don't think people have any concept of, if you're in between the islands on a paddleboard, because you were prone paddling, right? Or stand up?
Stand up.
You were stand up. It doesn't matter. I mean, how big were the boards you guys were using?
16 and 17.
And about how wide?
26 or 7, something like that.
So, you know, for anybody listening that's not aware, they're standing on a 16-foot board, 23 inches wide, maybe about 4 inches out of the water, with I'll just go with tiger sharks that are bigger than what they're riding, just cruising by. I mean, and winds, waves, surf, that nobody is, and unless you've done any kind of open water paddling or distance paddling, not a clue, because this isn't going out on a calm lake and paddling, 50 miles. It's unbelievable. And again, Dave, I'm absolutely going to have you back. We're going to talk more because I got so much more to talk about. And I'll be here with you for 5 hours. Okay. And we're going to keep going a little bit more. I'm just saying, yeah. But anyway, I just want to mention that for me, stand-up paddleboarding, here I'm in the right coast. I'm a surfer from New York, down here now in the hub of East Coast surfing. I got the Hobsgood twins around, and I know CJ really well, and the Lopez brothers are around, and all this stuff. And I see this little article in Outside Magazine: Laird's biking from Paris to the Normandy coast, and then stand-up paddling. This is 2005 across the English Channel, and there's this yellow board with his name on it and a paddle, and all I saw was that little picture and stuff, and I went, wow, that looks really cool. So I did a couple of quick searches on the interweb back then. Saw in the article that Randy French, who owns Surf Tech, was helping make them and distribute it. My local surf shop was a Surf Tech dealer. I literally rolled down there with the article, and I remember walking in, and Mike Mann, who's the owner, goes, "What the hell is that?" And I go, I don't know. Surf Tech makes it. He goes, "Hold on." So he calls Randy. I'm in his office. Puts Randy on the speakerphone, and he's like, "Hey, I got a guy in here who wants to order one of these. What the hell are they?" And Randy goes, "Yeah, you can take a deposit. We'll have them out about a month." Yeah, that was like 16 months later. I don't know, some ridiculous time. It was like 14 months later. They call me back and go, "Hey, this big stupid thing you ordered just came in. Oh, and by the way, it's no longer coming with a paddle, and we have no idea how to get you one. But here, come pick it up because we need to get the hell out of our showroom." And they had 3 of them. Right? So I go down and I get the board, and I'm like, "Seriously, you have we have no idea what this thing is. It's 10 times bigger what those boards, 12 feet, 12.1 by 35, 34. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like the size of a car." So I go down and get this thing and start immediately searching for paddles, right? Because my surf shop was like, "We have no idea. Just get this thing out of here." So I go and pick the thing up. I find Todd Bradley, who literally has this little, almost like a MySpace page, and his cell phone on it, right? And I know it's a cell phone. I go and call it, and Todd's like coming back from the beach. He's like, "Hello, Todd Bradley." And I'm like, "Yeah, do you guys sell Pat?" "Yeah, let me, I got to get to my car and towel off." I'm like, "What the hell is this?" So long story short, we got a deal. He agrees. He goes, "Hey, I can save you some shipping, some FedEx shipping. If your shop wants to get like 3 or 4 of them, I'll get you this." I called the shop, and they had 2 more boards that they had ordered with mine, with no buyers, just sitting. Literally, Mike Mann's like, "Get these freaking," he was so pissed. Cars were sitting in his showroom. So the manager at the time goes, yeah, we'll go ahead and get it. So long story short, I get my first paddle. No idea how to cut it. I'm like talking to Todd on the phone, and he's trying to tell me how to cut it. And all that stuff. So I go out to my surf break, and oh my God, man, this is 2006. People are like, "What in the heck?" I could. Right? Besides the fact you can't stand on it for more than 15 minutes. Legs start going to jelly. They're shaking like crazy because people don't realize all the little micro muscle movements that are going on. And so for 3 weeks, I'm a kook again. I'm 10 years old, falling on my ass, not even attempting to paddle into a wave, just trying to freaking stand up. Finally catch my first wave. Dude, I remember watching a movie or something with Jerry Lopez talking about this. I think he's with Sam George, the ex-editor of Surf Magazine. And he's talking about him seeing that for the first time, then going out and trying it for this time and going like, "Oh my God, I can go out for 30 minutes and catch 10 waves and go home. Like, I'm satisfied, I'm full," right? Sam George, I remember saying the same thing. Well, that's happened to me. I started catching waves. Well, within probably about a month, people are starting to walk up to me on the beach. "Dude, what's going on here?" I sat out there for an hour and a half. I caught one. You caught like 13 waves, surfed all the way into the beach, and left after 20 minutes. Like, what the hell? So again, because Brian, this whole thing of this shared energy that we have, that you and I have, I literally would just go, "Here, go try it out." I didn't care. Go. They bang up the rails, chip the edges of my paddle. It didn't matter. I ended up racing a 22-mile race on the thing, by the way, with a fishtail cutaway fin in 25-mile-an-hour headwinds, racing 12 miles. Took me 7.5 hours.
Wow.
Ran out of water at 5 hours. Ran out of food at 6 hours, something like that. Oh man, it was. But brutal. Again, I was hooked. That was it. From there, it turned into race boards, and oh my God, now I've got 15 stand-up boards, all different sizes, shapes. You and I've had talks about all the crazy fin designs and different things. But yeah, I mean, coming forward from that. So Kalama Performance, stand-up paddle boards. Now you got foiling. Tell me a little bit about that. Like just what you guys are doing, what you're into, all that stuff.
So the foiling for me has rekindled that stoke and inspiration that comes from your first wave. It is such a different and unique sensation as compared to any other board sport. You literally feel like you're flying. Now it's not easy, but it is doable. And I think that's part of the attraction is you don't just show up and go foiling. You have to earn it. And with that challenge comes satisfaction from improvement. And sometimes the improvement is significant and sometimes it's micro. But every step forward feels good because it took a lot to get there. Combine that with just the pure joy of riding a swell, not even a breaking wave, just a swell, is amazing. And so that's what attracted me to foiling initially. Then, once I started to understand what was going on and what needed to happen, came the design part and having to tap into my creativity, my critical thinking, my problem solving. And now it became so much more fun to have that puzzle to try and solve. There's the riding I'm trying to improve in, the fundamental skills of it. And then there's the equipment side, which poses a whole new challenge to solve. And had to rely on my creative thinking, all my past experience with various water holes, of displacement, of planing, all the different speeds that are going on, because there's a very wide variety of velocity dynamics happening. You need a displacement hole initially to get going so that the foil can kick in and create the lift to get up. Then there's the random touchdowns that you want to minimize the drag. Anyway, there's all these aspects to the design of the board, and not even touching on the actual hydrofoil really inspired me again to try and crack the code and then make that information or these boards available to other people so that it becomes easier for them. So that's kind of the focal point of Kalama Performance right now. It's definitely skewed towards foiling, but with all the foiling I've done in the last couple of years and having set down my stand-up and my longboard for quite some time, I am now rediscovering them and perhaps having as much or more fun than I've ever had on my stand-ups and my longboards. So now I've got three things every time I go to the beach that no matter what I pick, I'm coming out of the water just out of my mind, stoked, and with a real level of satisfaction and joy that, on the short term makes that day better. And in the long term, makes life ultimately better, right?
Yeah.
And
So for people don't realize what I want to stop you right here for a second, Dave. For people don't realize when you're using the word foiling. So again, I know people for us that are Waterman, geeks, we're like, oh, foiling, like that's my new thing. And for those that are listening that don't know what that is, so you and Laird started doing this how long ago?
I think it was late 90s.
Right, but it was just towing in, right? So there was. Yep. I remember growing up as a kid, being in a New York boat show and seeing what was that thing called? Where you sat on it?
The air chair.
The air chair, right? So I remember as a kid thinking that thing looks cool. And then to your point, I remember seeing. I think it was the Step Into Liquid. They might have touched on this. That you guys decided somebody brought one to the island.
Yep.
You guys went, this is boring. We're sitting down, chop the thing up. Let's figure out how to stand up on it, tow it behind whatever the hell crazy thing you're using then to tow into waves, and realize, holy crap, we're riding the wave beneath the wave.
Yep.
Right. So you're riding the energy of the wave, which again, we're always riding the energy of the wave, but we're requiring that braking energy. This is riding almost a more powerful energy, right? That's below that groundswell, so to speak. That's below.
You're tapping into that energy and drastically reducing the amount of drag it takes to ride it. So between those two things, really different dynamics going
But
on.
back then, you guys needed that power of something to tow it because you're using smaller foils and all of that. And so what Dave's talking about now with Kalama Performance is now we're talking about you don't need necessarily something to tow you in. He's been really expanding the ability to stand up paddle and foil. Use a wing. That's a whole nother thing that you brought your windsurfing background into. I remember Kai Lenny with the foiling, that giant, I'm just going to say it, that giant orange dildo he wore one time to do that blow up thing on his back.
Yeah.
Very creative. I remember seeing it being like, man, this dude's thinking way outside the box, but I don't think anybody's going to wear that. And then all of a sudden the wing showed up and it was like, oh, forget that thing, right? Like, that seems a lot cooler, right? You look more like Batman going down it. But I like the idea of the wing. And Dave, I have one of your personal boards. And unfortunately, because of COVID and everything else, I have not put a foil on it and I haven't gone out. That is my goal for 2022 is to become a foiler. But the wing combined with the foil is almost more, draws me more because my sailing background.
Well, it's an easier form,
right? Easier than the hop and pump, people, crew, so to speak.
What it creates is a counter force to balance against.
Right.
And so that makes the balance.
Do you feel it makes that easier? Does it make it easier to foil in some sense? Okay.
Absolutely.
Good.
The form that I'm doing is more closely related to tightrope walking, where it's all contingent upon you balancing at a single point.
Right. Right.
With the hand kite, there's a counter force that you can use to constantly kind of adjust yourself to stay centered over that singular balance.
Right. So when Dave's talking about foiling, for everybody listening, what's actually happening is, yes, there's a board of some type, size, what have you, attached, but there's a mast that's fairly narrow that's attached to the bottom. And at the bottom of it, you have wings, similar to what people might have seen in certain types of Asian kites and things like that. Like they have that kind of similar shape. Honestly, very much like a manta ray in some shapes that I'm seeing. But the whole point of it is that you're not staying on the board. When you're actually foiling, you're rising up out of the water, and the only thing in the water is actually under the water, not on top of it. And it's a magic carpet ride, right?
It really is.
You're Aladdin in that moment, and it's the skill and the feeling of staying up there is what's attracting so many people in the water sport community to gravitate towards it. There is a skill level thing, and I think, Dave, that's what you're doing with Kalama Performance, is trying to make it easier for people to foil. I think in the early days, certainly in the early days, and as we even flash forward even now, it's still, people go, yeah, I want to try that. And I watch local guys here, and they'll spend a whole ton of money on what they were told to buy, and they go out there, and I'm watching them, and you can just see the discouragement growing by the minute because they're just exhausted and they never got up in the air. And you can see them just, they don't want to, they're torn between destroying the equipment and expressing their frustration as they kind of walk up on the beach and go, that's a freaking waste of money. That thing's going to be a doorstop. So, Dave, that's easy. Talk a little bit about that, because that's really where I think Kalama Performance is going. Not just with that, but with the other, longboards and stand-up paddleboard. Well,
one other interesting fact right now, I just noticed I have 3% left on my phone.
No plug? That's a true surfer. No plug.
The plug is with the earphones. So if I undo the earphones, I can plug in and get the energy flowing back in.
Oh, you don't have a little dongle. Yeah, you can go ahead. We'll see how the sound holds up.
1 second. Is the audio okay?
Yeah, it sounds okay here.
Okay.
Yeah, that should be okay.
So, the focal point is cracking the code to make it as easy as possible with the foil board. And then making stand-up boards and longboards that are really easy to ride and just make it easy to have a fun time on the water. In longboarding right now, it's very popular to have kind of old California-style longboards, which is cool, and I love that style of riding. Nothing against it at all, but they're not easy to ride. And So my longboards are much easier to turning, catch waves great, nose ride, a little more versatile, I guess you'd say. The stand-up boards, same kind of philosophy. They're a longboard outline, really versatile. I like that style of surfing, where you can get on the tail, back the lip, or nose, or surf from the center, whatever you're into.
People ask me that all the time out here because they'll see me out surfing, and the biggest comment I get when I come into the beach is, "Wow, you really know how to handle that board." It's not me. I'm being honest with you, and I don't actually have it. I don't have a Kalama Performance stand-up board, but I have a Hawaiian Waterman designed board, and it's the way you guys approach volume and where to put it to make it so that it's easy to catch a wave, regardless of the size of the wave. Maintain the energy and the speed. Weight's a big thing, and everybody's gone super light. And I heard you say recently you're going back heavy again. And I was told this a long time ago. I remember Brian Kalama saying, "Hey, once you get to a certain lightness, you need that weight on waves because you don't want to you lose the momentum of that." So there's a delicate balance of, yeah, you want it lighter so that you don't get tired walking it down to the beach, but if it's going to suck in the water, who cares how hard it was to get to the beach? That's kind of my philosophy. So,
well, weight, yes, everything you just said, I agree with, and it's true as I know it. But to kind of expand on it a little more, the slower you go, yeah, it's nice to have a light board. You can kind of throw it around and you generate speed. But as the speed increases, that lightness turns into a higher frequency of bouncing and nervousness. And that's not fun to ride when you're going really fast. Things start to get critical, and that's where that weight dampens all the vibration, smooths everything out, and allows you to make a calmer, more positive, more flowy turn.
Yep.
More momentum associated with it. And so that's why a little bit of weight, I think, not too much, because you don't want the low end to be too compromised, but it extends the versatility and the range of what the board can serve well.
Right. So, for those out there, this is one of the things I really try and emphasize. And I think this goes for everything, right? Once something becomes popular, a lot of people start jumping in and trying to take advantage of the popularity. And there's always something, even when there's cars, right? Cars are an engine and four wheels. So I can go and get a Lamborghini, which is ridiculously expensive, and I can't drive it anywhere because the speed limits everywhere restrict what the car can do. So I want to spend all this money for something to go really fast that I'm not allowed to go really fast. So, but I do believe there's also a certain level of quality and design, even though it is still just four wheels in a car. I kind of take the same approach with boards, and I do truly believe that that's what Dave is doing with his boards. Even with the foil boards, I noticed when I got your personal board, which was funny is, mine's a 7-footer. You told me, oh man, I'm already going smaller. Are you going back the other direction now? A little bit?
Yes. Because
you were heading short, and now I heard you talk the other day. I thought I heard something about, no, kind of found I got to bounce back a little bit because you started to, just like with stand-up, you start to lose what you gain, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You kind of hit that point of diminishing returns.
Right.
Find out sort of where the walls are, where the guardrails are, and then you come back towards the middle a little bit and find that blend of positive benefits that keeps the board versatile and allows you to
and as far as
level of performance.
Access to your equipment, Kalama Performance, is still just mainland and Hawaii. You guys are not global yet, correct?
No, we have a distributor in Australia,
Japan,
France.
Perfect.
And we're trying to grow more. So it's expanding, but I'm really not trying to be the biggest brand out there. That's not my intention or my goal.
No, that's not the message I'm trying to send. I'm trying to send a message of, hey, there's certain things you want to be maximizing the fun, right? Yeah. And so to me, you want to have something that's going to make it easy to have fun. When it becomes hard to have fun, it's not that much fun, right? And that to draw a whole circle back, Dave, that's why you're in the Hall of Fame, and you didn't have to work that hard, right? See how I tied that all together, right? You've been having fun
Well done.
the whole time, and that's why you're in the Hall of Fame, man. You don't have to work that hard to be that well respected and to have a full life, including accolades like Hawaiian Waterman Hall of Fame. So that's awesome.
And that's sort of the philosophy of the company.
Yeah.
I could try and increase it in size, but then I wouldn't play as much myself. I'd have to be working more.
You'd be looking at spreadsheets like I do all day, which is, trust me, everybody, that is not fun. I did like 4 virtual calls this morning talking about cost of goods and materials and cost increases that are hitting the industry. That's my other day job, and how I'm supposed to help figure that out and adjust ASPs and all this stuff. Yeah, I'm not doing any of that from the water. That's all sitting at my desk, not having as much fun as honestly as I'm having right now. So Dave, so going in, obviously there's so much stuff I could cover with you. One other little thing before we get into kind of the final section here. I did want to cover, just let everybody know, maybe a little known fact. I think some people know it. Dave was James Bond. If anybody knows Die Another Day, there's an opening sequence where supposedly Pierce Brosnan is big wave surfing at night in the dark, right? Am I right, Dave? In like a camo suit to get into wherever he's going. That's actually Laird and Dave doing that. So that's a pretty cool fact, man. Not many people have that on their resume.
It was really fun doing it. We shot for 3 full days, sun up to sun down.
And how long was the shot in the movie?
Yeah, the scene lasted probably less than a minute.
Right.
But it was so fun to do, and it was Laird, myself, and Derek Dorner for the surfer.
Yeah.
And we had, I think it was Pete Cabrina and maybe Rush Randall, but Laird and I were getting towed by one jet ski, and we had 2 ropes. And then Derek would get pulled in on the 3rd rope so that we could clump together and kind of create this scene. And we were supposed to have night vision.
Yeah, right. And did you do it at night, or did they play with the lighting? Were you guys actually doing it at night, or were you?
No, that's just a
lighting editing thing.
Yeah, that was a special effect.
Right. Okay. But people have to understand, when you're seeing movies today, right, and you're seeing movies like, some of the new Dwayne Johnson movies and stuff like that, a lot of that stunt work, even though it's very real, meaning there are still stunt people involved, some of the more dangerous aspects are CG'd in. Not when you see that scene in Another Day. That is Dave and Laird and Derek Dorner just doing what they do and trying to not get killed at the same time. So, Dave, I want to jump into this last part. Kind of get a little esoteric here with your background knowledge, Hawaiian heritage, kind of all that stuff. And tie in a little bit of Kalama performance, I think, in this first question I'm going to ask you. So I heard you say something the other day. It was in a little video clip, and it might even be an old commercial. Where you said a board isn't complete until someone rides it. That sounds very Buddha-esque. In that, it's like if a tree falls in the woods, does anyone hear it? Kind of a thing. And if that doesn't say who Dave Kalama is as a board shaper and a surfer, nothing does. To make that statement, a board isn't complete until someone rides. That's a very Jerry Lopez thing. I picture Jerry Lopez in a lotus stance, yoga pose, riding a board that has that written on the side of it as he, cruises down. So tell me more about what you mean by that and how that applies to your life and how you kind of see the world.
Well, I mean, when a shaper envisions a board, you're envisioning it not in a board rack or mounted on a wall. You're envisioning the rail that you want to create and how it would interact with the water. Let's say Sunset or Piahi or wherever the spot is, you're envisioning how you want to make that rail to engage with the water for a certain type of rider, right? And every aspect, the rocker, the rail, the bottom contours, all those things. Your vision is one of action and riding. I mean, if you were making it for the wall, it wouldn't matter what kind of rails. All that would matter is the color or the shine on it, right? But that's not how you design a surfboard. And so if a surfboard is designed with the intent to provide a means for someone to ride a wave, and that's what it's made for, then yeah, it's not really a surfboard until someone surfs it.
So the way, now, Dave, where I'm going with this is where I heard it, this is where my mind went. So the board itself has not fulfilled its destiny until someone's ridden it.
Yeah.
You can shape the coolest board, but if it never gets wet and nobody ever goes and puts it through its paces, it doesn't know what it is yet.
Exactly.
It's just a hunk of foam and fiberglass sitting on a stand.
Your intention as a shaper or designer for this project isn't really complete. Doesn't really come to fruition until whoever you made that board for has an opportunity to ride it, and then the circle's kind of complete, right? Or it's closed or whatever. So there's the intention, there's the vision, and then there's the actual act that sort of fulfills the whole arrangement.
So you come from a long heritage. The Hawaiian culture in general has a very strong connection to, what the Hawaiians call mana, right? And actually there's other cultures that refer to it as mana as well. In that everything is interconnected, right? The rocks on the beach, the grains of sand, the water, the sharks, the fish, the wind, the mountaintops, the Hawaiian people themselves. Everybody is the same. So in other words, everyone is connected to the, obviously in ancient Hawaiian culture, they didn't refer to it this way, but in more modern times, if you think quantum physics, right? Everybody's connected to the field, right? For me personally, I didn't start understanding that. And I'm going to speak to your age comment. Same thing, man. I wish I knew this stuff when I was younger. And I kind of feel like you've known it without knowing you knew it. I guess the best way to put it, this whole time, right? That, a board isn't just a board. It's not just a hunk of fiberglass and foam. It has a life. It has a personality, from the person that shaped it and the person that rides it and where they go. And there's an energy that carries along with it. I mean, for me, adding a couple of outrigger canoes to my quiver as I started getting more into this, I realized I had them pointed the wrong way when I store them. I read that the Hawaiians, the nose has to be pointed towards the water, or it upsets the energetic balance of the canoe, right? Am I wrong in that? So I turned my canoes around, right? So all these little things, and what I found is they don't disrupt my life. They've expanded my life. In other words, life seems to flow easier because I'm flowing with it. And that's kind of when I think, for me personally, Step into Liquid which you were in, was one of the first movies that first helped get people to understand what it's all about, right? Whether it was you talking or Laird or Jerry Lopez, you guys were all kind of like, you could literally just be never seen a body of water, and you could watch that movie and go, wow, that's cool. There's something going on there that you can feel the energy. And I think there's even a quote in there, not from you, but one of the other surfers that says, we're riding waves, frequency, it's physical frequency. There's frequency everywhere, energy patterns, energy waves. We're actually tapping into it. And I think even right now with where you're focused with, not focused, but it's kind of one of the leading edges of Kalama performance and the foil. Oh my God, how much more tapped into the frequency of the wave can you be than when you're on a foil? Right? I mean, you're literally tapping that underneath energy. Do you feel like that is something you're aware of? Like, does that feed into you? Does that become part of not only who you are, but almost energize you on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to encapsulate a philosophy that is extremely broad, but once you start to adopt it and more so apply it to your life, there is a certain flow, let's say, more specific at times, like when you're actually riding a wave or doing it downwinder, or times less specific when, let's say, you're driving a car or taking the kids to school or whatever it is, where you're not fighting everything. There's traffic,
Yeah.
taking the kids to school. You can get, oh, why are these cars here? Why is it taking so long? And it can create this frustration and this negative energy, and it can consume you and make things much more difficult. Or you can just kind of go with the flow and ride what's in front of you, be it a wave or a traffic jam. And
Well, yeah, because to your point, as a fellow surfer, you're not having a lot of fun if you're angry because you just missed that wave, or you fell off before the wave finished, or whatever, and you start getting, nothing gets better. It just all gets worse. Everything just starts unraveling. So I like that that connection that everybody can relate to, and the fact that, yeah, surfing to the average person, this has been talked about in a lot of surf movies. Surfers, they're just goofing off, right? They're lazy. They just want to they don't want to grow up. They're just having fun. I don't see that, right? Most surfers I know are prolific businessmen, have great, very strong family bonds. They've got great friends. They've got a great family friend unit, right? They have very strong relationships with their friends. They seem to have more balance, and I think it does come from this energy that that we're all tapping into through something that we love so much. It's like it almost makes it easier to tap into the energy because it's so much fun, right? You're vibrating at this really high level, tapping into this really high vibration, and then it just kind of, it almost reprograms you in how then you go about your day, right?
The ocean, the energy that's out there, every surfer knows, or should know, or will learn, that is your teacher.
Right.
And when you're open to the lessons, you can learn a lot. But if you're not, and you're fighting it, you're creating a momentum that rolls or continues to create momentum in the wrong direction that just makes things harder and harder.
Yeah.
Or you learn to go with it, use the current to get you where you want to go rather than swimming against the current. And that momentum can make life easier if you learn to work with it.
Yeah.
So to your point, it is in essence a teacher, which allows you to take all those lessons and concepts and apply them in different aspects of your life. And if you do, chances are.
So that's the common thread. That's the thing that everybody, you don't have to live on the water. You don't have to be a surfer to relate to that. Find your own flow in your reality and use the same concept, and it should translate. Frequency is the same everywhere, right? Whether it's coming from an ocean wave or whether it's coming from, skateboarding down a hill in Arkansas, it all should relate, right? That energy and that flow, and then have that carry over into your everyday life. As a teacher, obviously you've been in some extreme conditions. Have you ever had a near-death experience? Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever had something where it was, you had something that really altered you because of what happened in the situation?
Yeah, I mean, when you say near death, did I feel my life was in question for a few moments? Yeah. I've never died
Right.
that experience and then come back, which sounds really profound from some of the stories I've heard. But being held underwater for an excessive amount of time with the Aussie, I've had those internal conversations with myself 20, 30 feet underwater. I'm not even sure how deep I was, but kind of going, wow, this is bad. This is really bad. If you were ever going to have a problem, this could be it.
And what was happening in that moment? How were you feeling and thinking?
I knew I was in a really serious situation, but I also know that letting the moment overwhelm you and consume you with panic is almost certain. It's almost certain you will not survive, or you lower your chances immensely, significantly less chance of survival when you place everything on top of your shoulders. And so at that moment, I tried to set all that down and just go one stroke at a time. If you're going down fight. So let's get going. Let's start with one. Okay, now two. And keep going one at a time until you get there. And
Right.
fight to that very life moment, whenever that moment is. And so you really try and segment what needs to be accomplished to its smallest parts. And just do them one at a time, because you can do one stroke. Everybody can do one stroke. And if you can do one, you can do one more. And pretty soon those one more turn into 20 or 30 strokes or whatever it takes to get back to the surface. But if you're at the bottom thinking, I'm going to have to do at least 30 strokes, that's too many. I can do one. I know I can do one for sure. And if
Have you applied that in other parts of your life when you don't have 1,000 tons of water on your head?
Yeah, absolutely. There's times where bills, family dynamics, car trouble, whatever it is, financial, whatever your pile is,
right?
You keep putting all those things up, and that's making you deeper and further underwater from the surface.
Yeah.
But if you take all those things that you need to deal with and just one at a time, let me put air in the tires so the car can drive. I can do that. Now the car works fine. Now I can go drive down to the bank and deal with the financial stuff.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And you just start with one thing. You can't solve it all with one foul swoop. You can only do what you can do, one step at a time. And if you break it down, set all the pile off the side for a minute, just pick one you can do one at a time. Eventually the pile's gone.
Right.
So, and that's a very simplistic example or analogy of what I mean, but it literally is how you have to approach it in order to get through things that are overwhelming.
Awesome. So I like I said, I apologize. I still have so much more to talk to you about. I'm going to definitely have you back on again if you're willing to do it. I want to have a set thing of ending these podcasts. And so I'm going to ask you 3 different words. You can answer either in a single word or just whatever you feel like saying, right? It doesn't have to be just a single word association. What do you think, or what comes to mind when I say the word peace?
Peace. Kind of somewhere between contentment and joy.
Okay.
Is peace. I don't think you can. Peace alone won't get you there, but it is such an important component of a full life, or a life of satisfaction.
Beautiful. Same question when you hear the word love.
Well, there's a few different levels or layers to that.
Okay.
On a personal level, I think it's the key to a meaningful life, right? Having that relationship with my kids, with my wife, and the love that we all experience is critical to fulfillment and sort of big and profound emotional satisfaction, I guess. On a much broader level, love, as corny as it sounds and as corny as I thought it sounds, can solve so many of the world's problems if there were more of it. And people adopted it in not to their personal specific relationship, but on a much broader outlook. Because most of the anger that's in our politics, in our world, all stems from fear. And fear to me is a little bit of a lack or a void of love. So if you could fill that area where the fear and the anger comes from with more love, it almost puts, if fear were a fire, it almost puts that fire out.
It can't exist. I've heard a lot of people say fear cannot exist with love, or that's where we spend most of our time in life. We either spend it in fear or we spend it in love. But fear cannot exist cannot exist in the presence of love. And fear is a low vibration and love is a high vibration. So if you stay in love, you're in a high vibration. It's ho'oponopono every day, right? That's all part of that as well. So that was awesome. One last one. And you touched on a little bit. Maybe you'll expand a little bit here. I don't know. Aloha.
Yeah, aloha starts with the golden rule. Treat people as you would want to be treated. And then it carries on to the emotional giving. It can be material giving. It can be knowledge and experience sharing. And it doesn't always have to be giving. Sometimes listening. Sometimes participating with is a sign of aloha. Sharing away is a great specific example of an act of aloha that can have a profound effect, in a simple action.
That last part is something I don't think everybody understands. That how they are being in the vibration of this planet, this big blue rock, actually affects everything and everyone else. There's a place called the HeartMath Institute in California, and there's some other groups related to them that have actually now expanded, and they put out these frequency measuring devices around the planet, and they've got several of them out there now, and they've been using satellites as well. There's a frequency that the whole planet kind of vibrates at. Like if all of us as humans left the planet, there's a frequency that they can measure. They can actually see it. The planet's actually vibrating at a certain vibration. I know Hawaiians have been well aware of this for a very long time, millennia. And then when you look at certain events that are occurring around the world, they've actually been able to measure that the frequency changes. And crazy enough, the morning of 9/11, they had this spike and there was like a delay. So there's a delay of when the news got around the world of what had happened. Globally, the frequency did something it hadn't done in all whole time they've been measuring the frequency. Huge, massive spike, right? Well, what that tells us is that how everybody's thinking and feeling can change the physical frequency of the planet. And the planet's alive. Again, Hawaiian culture, they know that as well, too. This isn't just a planet that, through Big Bang Theory just showed up here. It's a living, breathing thing. I know you know it as well as anybody. But that statement about aloha, right? That how you're being affects everybody else. That ripple effect. That's that energy. That's that frequency. Dude, it's beautiful. Love it. Well, thank you for all that, Dave. Like I said, I got so much stuff still left here to talk to you about. So I can't wait to get back into it the next time. Again, Dave Kalama, a legendary mountain of a man with a huge heart. I love you, brother. I'm so excited for everything that's going on with you and your family. Didn't even touch on all the crazy antics your son Austin's doing on. I don't even understand. I just assume you're hovering. I assume you're hovering above him with a helicopter, and there's some kind of cabling thing that I'm not aware of, because he does things that, according to physics, shouldn't be happening with a foil board. I mean, that's, like I said, there's so much more stuff, dude. We'll catch it on the next one. Again, Dave, thank you so much. For everybody listening, everybody watching, find peace, lead with love, and live aloha. Thank you for listening to BluRock, and peace, love, and aloha. Thanks, Dave. Yep. And I'll catch you soon. Have a great holiday if we don't get a chance to catch up. And
best of luck with the podcast. Happy holidays. Have a great Christmas. Have some fun in the water.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on.
Mahalo, brother. Appreciate it. Aloha.
Aloha.